Okay, so this is, I guess, part two of these videos. Um, I left off the last video. We just had the simple web app that we made with it's getting this data from a web API written in ASP.NET Core, and we're using Typescript and React. Really, we're just kind of doing everything manually, grabbing everything from CDNs, React here. And I want to change this up a little bit. This particular configuration using the TypeScript here in the root, really it's really basic and really simple, right? It's just going to take each file, TypeScript file that you have in your source, and it's going to convert it or transpile it into JavaScript and put it down here. Now, when you start building your web app and you got lots of different assets and resources and images and style sheets and tons of TypeScript files, that's where this particular configuration kind of falls short. Being able to reference the different files in a strongly typed way and import, another TypeScript file into this file and use functions and stuff in here from that other file. That's where this configuration kind of falls short. So I'm going to set up Webpack to start. We do need to get rid of this node modules directory that's sitting in our root, because I tend to like to create this client folder here and place things inside of it. And it's got its own node modules directory. And so inside of this client folder, it'll be sort of, I guess, everything client side related, your TypeScript, all your config, all that sort of stuff. And then it keeps this project root with all the C# stuff. It just kind of keeps it separated, right? Our public folder here, the www root, you could even move that into there. I don't know if ASP.NET would recognize it then by default, but you could technically manually do that. So I do want to move our component into here, into this source folder, and and then delete this from here, and then we'll just kind of move our TypeScript config. We'll move it into this client folder. Our package .json, we'll move it over there. And then, yeah, that looks great. So to delete these node modules folders where VS Code kind of has a bunch of things referencing it, VS Code kind of throws up when you just right-click this folder and try to delete it. So usually what I'll do is I'll close VS Code and come in here and delete it manually. It lets you delete it really quickly without too much fuss. Trying to delete it in VS Code, for some reason, it just kind of locks up and chokes, and it just doesn't work properly. So we've got things moved over here. Ultimately, we want to have this file auto-generated, right? We don't want to be referencing CDNs and stuff like that. We want to just install a node module using npm or yarn and reference it right in our TypeScript files, and let all the referencing work itself out. It becomes much more scalable doing it that way, I feel like. So inside this templates folder, I usually just kind of create a templates folder in case you do end up having more than one. I create index.template.html file. I just kind of stub it out with some of this default stuff. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. But I just kind of stub it out with some of this default stuff. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this title. You can use Webpack to auto-generate this as well, this ti I don't think there's really anything in here. We might want to we want to keep our root right here. So ultimately, we're going to have Webpack get our generated bundles. Our generated bundles are going to include everything: our Sass, our images, all of our different Typescript files. It's going to get everything, optimize it, put it into one JavaScript file, and then we're going to also use Webpack to create this HTML file for us, and it'll create a script tag down here with that bundle, referencing that bundle. So it's just a more sort of another hook where we can automate it to kind of speed up development if you plan on having a lot of noise, a big project with a lot of different resources and such. So this will actually end up getting deleted. We won't even be using this anymore. Our goal is to have that auto-generated as also we want this auto-generated. Notice this React code here that so the TypeScript transpiler, if you notice, this looks nothing like our TypeScript code over here, right? We're using this JSX. The transpiler is actually turning our JSX into all this, create element stuff. And I feel like it just makes this JavaScript a little less readable. But anyhow, when we change our TypeScript config to use the CommonJS module resolution, it won't look like that. It'll look almost identical to our TypeScript here, to be honest. Instead of using import statements up here, it'll be requiring the modules that we need. So there's a few subtle differences in there. So we'll just delete that too. So we want to get to where get to the same place, right? This won't work anymore when we refresh, but we want to get it to where we have this again, but in a more complex, I guess, configuration, but much more scalable. So if we look in here, we're definitely going to need some new modules. And when you're working in VS Code like this, where we went into this subdirectory, I just will open up that directory, pretty much cd into that directory down in here when I go to start running my commands and stuff. So when you run yarn, it's in the right directory. You know what? I was just doing something where I needed to use a different version of Node, so I need to install really quick a different version. So use 10.11.0, a much newer version. So if we list, hopefully, yeah, it's using that. So I happen to know this other little quirky VS Code bug. I do need to close code down and reopen that. Now that I changed the node version. And then once again, we're going to need to open this up in the terminal and then run it like that. We don't want to install these modules with a super old version of Node, I suppose, right? Okay, so we do need to get quite a few new resources. We got Bootstrap. I'm just going to add a bunch right here. We do need Webpack, and we're going to need the Webpack CLI. We're going to want types for Webpack. We'll use Gulp. We'll get the types for Gulp as well. And Gulp has a CLI too. So we'll install those, and then there's a bunch of Webpack extensions that I like to use, and we'll install those next, and I'll explain those. Looks like we got types for React and React DOM, but we didn't actually install the modules yet. We do need to install the React modules, Bootstrap module, jQuery module. Since we're not grabbing those from CDNs, now we're grabbing them from our modules. So we're going to have to do those as well. So this HTML Webpack plugin, that is the plugin Webpack extension that's going to allow us to generate those HTML files. So there's another one, CSS loader. It's solely Webpack related, a Webpack extension. The file loader, that's going to allow us to load up, say an image, right? A .png. I get the source map loader and the style loader. Those are other Webpack extensions. TS loader is one we're going to need for loading since we got TypeScript, and that actually in Gulp and some other things will use TS node. That allows us to, you know how you can type node space and then just pass a JavaScript file and it'll execute it. Well, TS node will allow you to do that same thing, node space and pass it a TypeScript file. We already have TypeScript in scope, so let's install up these, and then we'll grab our client-side libraries that we want to use. I'm not sure, did I ever get the Sass loader? So let's do yarn add. We'll add React and React DOM. I hope it's like that and not without the hyphen. And we'll want. Actually, we got types for React already in our project right here. So if you use Sass, which I tend to favor, I suppose, you're going to want to install that also. So that'll grab that, and then and allow you to use Sass and use the Sass command in your terminal, etc. I think Sass is like Ruby or something like that. It's a different language, so it has a lot of specific requirements. But this Node Sass kind of is ready to go out the box. The Sass loader is the Webpack, another Webpack extension. It's going to allow us to actually just reference those Sass files directly from our TypeScript files and use any of those styles that we want. And Webpack will handle, when the React component gets loaded, if it requires certain styles, it'll make sure to add those into the DOM for us at the time that it needs it. And the very second that it doesn't need those styles, it removes it from the DOM. So it's really efficient that way. So I might have missed some, but that's kind of a lot already. So we'll leave it right there. We are going to need to make a few modifications to our TypeScript configuration. And let me just copy and paste some of these in here, and I'll explain it. So we're changing this. It was on UMD, I believe. Those React modules were UMD. We're changing this to CommonJS. The node resolution, we didn't change that. Our outdoor from let's see, from here, yeah, we go back one. Yeah, that's right. No implicit any, that's just TypeScript stuff. Makes you type out all your return types from functions, stuff like that. We're going to target ES 2017. It's a little bit newer. It'll change our JavaScript that's produced. To use a newer version. The benefit of this is literally you could come in here if you're targeting a super old browser, and that browser would choke on ES 2017 ECMAScript standards, then you could just come in here and simply change that to some different version of JavaScript, and you don't have to go and modify any of your code. Kind of TypeScript is handling all that for us, right? Source maps, we want to produce those, and then most of the rest of that's just some fluff stuff. So another thing, if you do have and use write unit tests, right, I usually put the .spec to the name of the component that I'm testing. So we'll make sure that we exclude that in case we do add those later. And then as far as the include, I think we just need to include things in this source file. So anything in this source file, any folders or types therein, we'll grab those, okay? So there might be some other stuff in here. You know what, I'm going to want to have a folder called assets so I can show you the images stuff. We'll create that right now. So we'll just create a folder called assets, put it in there. And this will let us reference those directly in here at the top, import them. You know, it could be a JPEG or whatever. So that's going to be a beneficial line of code, I feel like. We can put that up here right at the start. So I feel like I think that's done. So the next step would be to add our Webpack config. The standard is webpack.config. We're going to use Typescript. Everything else is Typescript, right? To be honest, I rarely create JavaScript files. So, and I've got a Webpack config that I just kind of carry forward. I kind of use it as a template for all whenever I need a Webpack config. And then I just modify it to whatever it is I'm needing for that particular project. But I will go over and explain what it is, right? So we're just importing Webpack up here. If you're not familiar with TypeScript, this is sort of the benefit, right? Webpack is just, we just installed it down here with, you know, yarn add Webpack and or npm I Webpack, and we simply reference it and pull out whatever we want from that particular module, and we're free to use it, right? And it's all strongly typed. We get great IntelliSense with all those modules, npm modules, and in the rest. So notice those three little dots. It can't find the TypeScript definitions for it. So if we go add at types, that's just the definitely typed repo. So npm repo, you could just whenever you get a module, if you're writing TypeScript, you do the at types and then module name. And sometimes there isn't, no one's published TypeScript definitions for that module, and that's fine. It'll just fail to install. And if there does exist TypeScript definitions, it'll install. And then after it installs, you should see these go away. There we go. Sometimes you gotta wake it up, right? So the mode, development, that's self-explanatory. There's a lot of different targets in here. We're targeting web. If you're using Electron or Node WebKit, you know, there's different targets. It'll treat your modules, everything so differently. So that's a pretty critical part. So entry, this is sort of each bundle. If you're doing a Spot app, you might only have a single entry, right, called app or index or whatever. But if you're doing it kind of by the page or app, you know, area or so, you can create an entry, however many entries you want. You kind of point it to one single file here. I think you can include more than one file in here, but you'll point it to one single file. And Webpack's going to go to that file, and it's like the head of the tree. It'll branch down through everything that file touches, and the styles, the logo, or the images, all of the code, and it'll optimize it all and kind of bundle it up into a single file. And that's where this output section kind of comes in. We're saying where we want to put it right here. And then this is sort of the pattern. How do you want to name these bundles that we create? So we're just going to say the name. This is the entry name. So it's right here. So this would be index.bundle.js. This resolve section, these are the types of files that we want to allow Webpack to look at when it's, you know, when we import that file from our TypeScript file, from our entry. These are the types of extensions that we want to get processed by Webpack. So DevTool, this is there's a lot of different source maps. You could do inline source maps, etc. Optimization, to be honest, I kind of typed this out and got this from the Webpack documentation once and wrote out these different values that I thought would be helpful. And most of these are defaults, so you really don't even need this optimization chunk right here. You know, I have played around with modifying these settings. It can dramatically change your bundles, how many bundles are created, stuff like that. So it's a pretty important part. So this module, this is how we're going to process each of the different, this test is saying, you know, when you come across a .tsx file, how do you want to process it? This actually, the question, this is saying if you come across a .ts or tsx. So this is directories. We're kind of narrowing the scope down. If we do end up having a test directory in here, like that, where we put unit tests and such, we can tell it, hey, don't go looking in there, you know. It's just to speed it up, you know, narrow the scope of where you're going to look for these particular files. And then the loader, we're going to process all of these files with this TS loader extension. TS loader, there's another one called Awesome Typescript loader. That's a really popular one. But TS loader, it's just going to take those and run the TypeScript compiler on it. And we tell it our config right here, TypeScript config. So this next one, this is for all of our Sass files, right? So the way this works, this is sort of a different way than we're doing specifying this rule setup here. This might be a more common way that you see it, where you're just chaining the extensions. So you're going to start on this end. We're going to process these types of files with Sass loader, pass that result and pipe it into CSS loader, and then into the style loader. Likewise, the CSS, it works the same. We're just going to go into here, then into here. So this is a unique one, that file loader Webpack extension that we installed. This is where we're using it. So if we want to reference a GIF or PNG, and you can modify this too and add whatever extensions you need, then this is just for our source maps. It'll process our output of JS files and handle all of the source maps for us. So this particular one, this is the HTML Webpack plugin, right, that we imported right here. We want to take our chunks, our entry right here, our produced bundle, and generate an HTML from using this template, and we expect this extension to create the actual script tag to reference our bundle for us. So if we program this all right here, it should create an HTML index.html file in here from our template, but it'll also have our script tag referencing our bundle. And this has a lot more settings. If you look into here, a lot of stuff you can play around with this particular plugin. And there's other plugins that I found that work with this plugin as well. And that's it. You do have to make sure that you export this item right here that we're creating. So we're creating a variable right here where we're assigning this object to it. You do want to make sure that you export it right here, because later on we're going to create a Gulp file with some Gulp tasks, and we want to be able to import this config and kind of make our Webpack calling and using our Webpack a little bit more easier, right? So also, while we're here, I want to add a script section. We'll just call this script Webpack. This is just an npm script, and you can just call it like that, right? Just Webpack. If you want, I think it's project. I think it's hyphen project, and then you could specify the actual Webpack config file. As long as we've got all of our TS node working, TypeScript's installed, I think we could just call Webpack. Hopefully, let's see what it does, shall we? Actually, we haven't updated this code yet to use our brand new config. So we're definitely going to have to do that. We need to import our client-side modules up here and stuff like that. So let's do that real quick. So we'll say import. So this, I don't like importing all of React like this. The whole React, it's a namespace, right? So, but when you get down into the nitty gritty like this right here, use effect, you could say import use effect from React. I prefer to do the import things like that and only import the things that you need, right? So you get the signature and all that sort of data from it here. And you can also, this helps you to discover, you know, what all types are in here. What can you import from here, right? So that's really beneficial too. So we use the use effect and the use state, right? So this would allow us to remove this right here. So we also are calling render down here. We need to import that. So we'll import render from React DOM. Okay. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So then we could get rid of this. Okay, so now let's go take a peek at this and see what it produced, right? Index.bundle.js. So notice it added this. So it created from our template. And then this is the produced Webpack, right? It's a lot less legible if you're just wanting to come through here and read it, you know, from top to bottom. It looks different, right? It has a lot of Webpack stuff to require things, stuff like that. So that part is going to be extremely different. So let's get our watch tasks going on again. Since I restarted this task, we've got this watch task. So remember, this is going to build this bin folder, right? And everything, all the C# stuff, it's compiling that and building it. And then it started it all out, and we're running on this port right now, so on our local host. So that's that, and that's running. And we did change Webpack since we ran it last, right? So if we come back into here, I'll tell you why I did this. So why I add this script, so you can just call it, and it has to do with this being in this nested directory right here. Okay, because anything that you're doing from the terminal, usually your root directory. So that allows us to kind of do that. When we add the Gulp task to run Webpack and Webpack watch and stuff like that, we'll be able to just pipe into this directory and that won't be an issue. But that's a quick way to be able to run these tasks, right? And this is always going to show you what it generated and, you know, the size of it and stuff like that. So if we come back over to here, I guess we hope that it'll work, which it's not working, so we do need to figure that out. I suspect it's something to do with that bundle. Oh, jQuery. So we need jQuery, a few other things. So we could come back over to here and say import all as $ from jQuery. How's that look? Like hopefully that'll work. Okay. Oh, sorry, folks. That's definitely the wrong place to do that at, right? What else did we? Bootstrap. We're using Bootstrap, right? Yeah. Starting to come back to me now. So let's see. To import Bootstrap, kind of do it like this. So it's when you import styles, Sass files, CSS files, you don't do the import star or import brackets, right? It's just import and then the path right in here. Okay, and this is a module, so we're not putting a dot slash in front of it. If we put the dot slash or dot dot slash, right? If we start with the dot, we're telling Typescript, hey, it's one of our files. Go, relative to this file. When you don't put the dot dot, it's going to assume it's a module. So it's going to look for it in the node modules folder. There's a probing, right? Node does this this whole probing algorithm that it runs. Bootstrap. I think it's min.css, something like that. So we could try to run our Webpack again and see what happens with it. We can't get those, you know what, while we're waiting for that to build, let's go ahead and I just want to add a gulp file.ts. Okay, so this is pretty great. I'm a huge fan of Gulp, just a huge fan. There's so much you can do from a Gulp file. Yeah, it's just great. So I've got a bunch of imports already. I'm just copying and pasting from an existing Gulp file. You know what? Where we've got this in the root, we'd also need to make a package, package.json in this root so that we can install Gulp. We don't want to do that, so let's just move this over into our client folder, okay? That way, Gulp's already installed, right? I think. Let's go look. Yeah, Gulp. So Gulp's already installed, and we can reference it from here. So I've already got a pretty cool little, sort of my own little Gulp Webpack boilerplate code. Okay, and I'll explain it here. So that you've already seen. Webpack config. This is sort of how we're referencing our webpack.config file, right? You don't put the extension when it's a TypeScript or a JavaScript file. So it's right here, and we're going to import everything, the default, right? And we're going to assign it in a variable called webpack config. So ultimately, this has that webpack config JSON object, right? The JavaScript object that you can just start dotting into, and all is great there. Okay. So this is a node module, just from the child process, a default node module. We want to import in the spawn and the exec. Print stats verbose, it's just some Webpack stats settings, right, to control what gets printed out like this from Webpack. I've got a quiet one where I'm kind of really turning a lot of stuff off, and then a verbose one where I just let it run wild and show me everything. When you're watching, you don't want it to print out all those details, or you might, but it's hard for me to notice if it picked up the watch, when it's printing out so many details that your eyes have to wade through. And Webpack, when you're calling it manually through code, you pass it a callback function. So this is just a callback function that we're going to pass into Webpack. So here's our watch tag. So we imported Webpack, so we're just going to pass it our config right here that we imported, right? And then we're going to call the .watch on it. And we're passing, this is all the options. There's a lot more options you can pass to it. And then we're passing our callback that we created, this little callback function. This handles, printing the details out and how much details out we want to print. And then it kind of finishes up and completes the Gulp task. The Gulp task, you ultimately want this function right here to be called before it finishes. On a watch task, we're not finishing. Right here we are, right? So we're passing it through so we can have our callback. When Webpack's done, it'll call this, which will finish out the Gulp task in the console. So, and then you got a default task right here. So that's pretty much it for that. So if we were to come into here, into this directory where we've got that Gulp file installed, and just type Gulp, we need to get this to work and to call our default task, because that's the way Gulp works. If you just call Gulp and you don't specify a task name, then it'll run that default task, which it did. It worked. Everything's fine. See, I printed this out to the console. Oh, if you're curious of why it's green, so this chalk, it's just another npm module, which I don't remember installing. Oh, maybe that's what those little errors were. So we could say yarn add chalk, right? So that's how that works. So now to do our Webpack stuff, we've got a watch task and a bundle task. So if we say gulp bundle, our hope is that it'll run this code right here, and that'll do our bundle. So we do have some issues in our Webpack. Lots of red here, right? Something to do with that Bootstrap line of code. Did we ever install Bootstrap? Yeah, I'm not sure that we did install Bootstrap. If this still chokes to get on with this, we'll comment that line out real quick. I'm just trying to get the Webpack building and working. We're just about done with this particular config. I think this is something jQuery. Okay. Maybe we didn't install yarn add jQuery. Trial and error, right? Okay, so notice the outputs here. It's a lot more slim, right? And that's one of the benefits of using a Gulp task to do all your tasks related stuff. So now, likewise, I happen to have an extension called a Visual Studio Gulp extension, and it's just a task runner. So it'll find your tasks and it puts them in this menu up here to allow you to catch them that way. You know what, no matter how many times I rescan, I don't think it's going to find this Gulp file because it's nested in this other folder. If this Gulp file was in the root, it would find the Gulp file tasks and put those in there for us. So what we can do is run gulp watch and start running. If you change your Webpack config, you're going to have to stop your watch and restart. But now when we come into here and modify something in here, Control S, notice how it updated. It updates rather quickly. So we can test that Bootstrap line of code out real quick. So that looked like it worked. I don't know if yeah, so that was it. We just needed to add those other few modules. So now we're back to kind of where we were at the beginning, but we've got a much more rich configuration that's going to allow this web app to scale, you know, pretty easily, in my opinion. So, and we're using React. It's going to be extremely easy to update the versions and stuff like that of your modules. So now let me show you an example of adding, let's add index.sass, right? So in the Sass files, we can actually reference and import. We've already got the Bootstrap module installed, which it installs all of the Bootstrap Sass. So if you want to extend the Bootstrap via Sass, you can import the Sass up here too. You can import mix-ins, etc. So let's just do create a style here. We just want some way to test if that our styles are being imported and executed. Okay, so now we got a class here, text blue, right? So if we applied that to something down here, what does that say? That's my last name. Simple. Ah, weird. Must be my fingers just typed that out, right? When so class name, the React way, we just specify a class, right? So that should turn it blue when we do. Notice it built right there, so we should just be able to see this F5. Now we haven't imported that file, and that's why this isn't blue yet. So hopefully we want that to be blue, right? I don't know if that's any significance, but I usually import my Sass files right at the top here. So remember // if it starts with that // it's going to tell the Typescript compiler to go looking for a file, right, instead of a module. So we'll save that built, come back over to here, F5, it's blue now. So that's pretty neat, right? I feel like that's extraordinarily neat. You can create a Sass file for each one of your files down here. The beautiful thing, too, about this configuration, you don't have to worry about these, multiple Sass files about having naming conflicts, right? Because everything's these class names are going to get renamed and put like a GUID on it, so it knows where you import this exact class. If you've got an imported in a subcomponent, something called text blue as well, it'll only work in that subcomponent. So that's another huge benefit of this. I don't think we need this anymore now that see how I imported it up here in the Sass. So as long as we're importing that Sass file from here, I don't think we need the Bootstrap, and Bootstrap should still work. Yeah, it does. So so we don't need that. So let me show you one more thing and then we'll be done right here, okay? So I want to say import. Actually, let me grab an actual image. I'm going to throw this over here so you don't see all my images. This. Okay, so I just want to grab just some image. I'm just actually just looking for like any image that's on my machine right now, okay? So if I grab this image and throw it into this assets folder, okay, it's just some screenshot. It is kind of named funky, right? Let's say image 1, right? Okay, so now from in here we can say import all as, I don't know, logo from, and then remember if it starts with the // it's going to be looking for, so we need to go back one directory, // into the assets, and then image1.png. It's not a TypeScript or JSON file, or JavaScript file, so we do need to provide the extension. So notice the squiggles. Let me show you how we can fix that, right? TypeScript, it doesn't know what to do with this, right? It knows how to load the modules, stuff like that. So we need to tell it how. So you can do that by creating a file called custom.d.ts. This is a TypeScript definition file. And if you declare these as modules, so anything with a .png or SVG or GIF or JPEG as modules like this, this will help the TypeScript compiler to not choke on it. And then we may also need to do and restart our tasks to get assets / I was kind of hoping that it would find the image 1.png. I was hoping it would find it. I was just retyping it to see if I could wake it up. So if we came down here, right, and said, I don't know, img, and inside of here It's React, so we can literally just say logo. We don't have to mess with URLs or anything like that, right? And this is all code, so you can say, you know, use it in branches and stuff like that. So that's technically how you would use the Webpack. Gulp, what was it, Gulp bundle? Yeah, oops. There might be something wrong with that file loader related stuff. It's thinking that's a module as well. Okay, so this might be a problem right here. So if we duplicate this and say assets like that, you know what? I don't think that was it either. I think it's actually in our maybe our Typescript. Config. We did say to include /assets, anything with the assets. Maybe you don't use that. /assets. Yeah, it does look correct, I suppose. Still not liking this part though. Oh, you know what? Yeah, we added a custom.d.ts, right? There we go. It's looking a little more promising. This has gotten to be a really long video. Sorry. Look at that. So it's literally that simple. I've been doing websites for a long time now, and you know, managing all your assets and stuff like that. You know, it's just never really been this easy. I mean, there might be other ways, and maybe I just been doing it the hard ways all these years, you know. But I'm really digging this this stuff, and I just kind of got into React and Webpack and Node, all that stuff, you know, a year and a half ago. So you've seen that image was pretty crazy big, right? So I'm going to just kind of limit it in scope. We didn't run our Gulp watch, was it? So we can't just hit Control S right now and expect that to update. So we loaded some Sass, we loaded images, all in the same file. Technically, so inside of here, you could say, you know, temp.ts, just ts, because we don't plan on, this isn't a React module, so we don't need to uppercase it and do tsx. There's no JSX syntax in here. I just wanted to show you how maybe we grab this function, right, and put it in here. We would need to export this function so that we can grab it from another file, and then looks like unfortunately we would have to pass this this values in. And set values. Right. I could think of some easier ways to do this, definitely, right? Just right now, I just kind of wanted to show you this. So now up here, you can literally say import from ./temp, and you should see a list of just the things that are exported, this on mod values. So we technically would be able to comment that out, and right here we'd be able to start hopefully seeing, so remove, this is the add, what is this doing? Oh, so remove false, and then we need values and set values, right? Set values, something like that. So values and set values. There we go. I just kind of wanted to show you how changing, see, they all still work. So how separating all your stuff out into separate files, how easy it is. And if you notice, here's that image. It renames the image, okay, to this big long GUID, and it handles doing the link to it and all that, right? So you don't have to build out links to find your images. It's got this map that points to all of our Typescript files for us, so when you debug, right, that's pretty great. And this thing contains everything, all of our CSS, our Sass, and this, we haven't had to change this file at all, right? We've added other files, and never did we added that temp file, and we didn't have to go and include it in a bundle and make sure that it's that it got in there and it's referenced correctly, right? So so that's this. There's one more video, hopefully it'll be a very small video, where I just hook up to this same app right here to use a SQLite database, and we'll build another controller that queries that SQLite database, and it uses an entity framework. So no SQL, you don't have to write any SQL, and it's just kind of using a lot of the built-in ASP.NET Core greatness, like dependency injection that's built in and stuff like that. So I'll do that video next.